Sekrit.
Hey everyone, you're tuned into the Sekrit Podcast, and today I'm super excited to have such a great friend who's also a very, very talented man. Goes by the name of Wizdom. Hey Wiz, how you doing?
I'm good, man. You good?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Wizdom has a few AKAs as well, also known as Big Wizzy, and Father Wizdom, and Practical Wisdom. Basically, whatever he does involves wisdom.
I'm out.
So not only is Wiz a amazing MC, he's also the management director of a company called Tileyard Impact and modeling agency Fully Clothed Beauty.
And I forgot to say about I'm a director at the GMIA actually as well,
yes,
which I should also mention.
Yes.
Gospel Music Industry Alliance.
There we go. Right. I mean, it's a good thing you pointed it out, because to be honest with you, Wiz, like there seems to be so many things that you get up to, and although I know what you do, like the different things you do, the different titles you have, it's quite hard to keep up with. And so I commend you on the very many hats that you wear and how you're able to...
My business partner says similar things.
I'm sure they do. So Wiz, man, like as I say, we go way back. Do you know how many years it's been?
Yes, actually, I was talking to someone about this recently, and we met at Cypher. 2001 on the 1st of September.
1st of September. You have the exact date.
I have the exact date. And the reason is I have the exact date is it was the first Cypher, and also it was the day that England beat Germany in Germany 5-1.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those amazing days sort of in history that that we happened to come into contact with one another.
And we celebrated that England win, with an amazing Cypher.
Yeah,
man. Yeah, no, I mean... Yeah, that was a special day for me, and that pretty much like entered me into a whole new world. Meeting you guys, and I think there was something beautiful about, and there's something very hip hop about it, like that I met you guys in the form of hip hop, like in the sense that of you guys were MCing, I was DJing. You know, I don't think we necessarily conversed before that moment.
No.
And then it was afterwards we got to know each other. So there was something quite beautiful about that, and I think it sort of set a good tone for what was to come in our combined journey.
Yeah.
So man, because that particular cypher, everyone was there, weren't there? There was you guys, GreenJade,
Heavenly Soldiers.
There
was
Warrior was
Shabazz,
there.
Warrior. It was Michaelis Constant.
Yeah.
I think there was so many just really significant people.
It was great, man, and it was so cool to meet you guys, not just because of your skill level. I mean, I was blown away by the skill level, and to be part of that as well in terms of DJing while that amazing period of the cypher was happening. But, you know, you guys are just, you know, such great guys as well. And you had something about you. So before we get on to GreenJade, in terms of your hip-hop journey, where did it all start for you? I seem to remember you being a big Ice Cube fan growing up.
Yeah, when I was, to go right back, I used to sing in a choir at school, in primary school, and I loved singing, just absolutely loved performing, always did. And but my voice broke really early. So I literally went from speaking like this to, hey everybody, how you doing? You all right? Like, it broke down there at like 9 or 10. And it meant I couldn't continue in the choir. So I was gutted because I couldn't sing anymore. And
you had quite an early growth spurt.
Yeah. So I've been this height since I was about 12, which is 5'6", and then stopped. Just didn't get any better than it. And I was really gutted that I didn't have singing anymore. And when I was in secondary school, in year 7, someone gave me a NWA tape, and it blew my mind, this whole hip-hop thing. And and I'd also sort of come across the Humpty Dance by Digital Underground, which I found hilarious. And like these two things of NWA and the Humpty Dance, sort of like, I quite like this, and sort of really started getting into hip hop and started buying records. And me and my mates started going out early when we were about 12 or 13 and finding record shops, in sort of central London, back when there used to be record shops and you could spend a whole day just digging in a crate of vinyl. And then probably got a set of decks when I was about 13, 14. And then at 14, I went to Brit School. At the time, it wasn't the Brit School that everybody knows now. I was the first intake of year 10 into Brit School. And they had a Brit School CD, which was mainly, because it only just started in year 10. I hadn't had anyone as young as me involved in it. And what had happened was I built a relationship with a couple of older producers, and we just started getting on. And then I think the BNP got into power somewhere, and I was so emotionally enraged about it as a 14-year-old. I remember watching the news, getting up, going into my kitchen, and like standing in front of the glass, because it was at night, so I could see myself in front of the sink. And this verse just came out of nowhere. Like, I'd immersed myself in hip hop, but never really thought of myself as being an MC. And verse just came out of nowhere. And I wrote it for this song called Klansman. It was about sort of racism and stuff. And it ended up, because I had mates, I showed it to a couple of people. They were like, oh, we should record it. So I ended up recording it at school. And then it ended up being put on the Brit School CD. And then I ended up performing it, and then it's just like, oh, I can do this now. And obviously, like, I was the first rapper to ever have a song on the Brit School CD. It wasn't.
Wow, that's something. Wow.
I've been pioneering since then, and like, it kind of developed. It was kind of cool that I was the rapper in the school, sort of thing. And then in my second year, I met this girl. I was doing a DJ workshop because they'd had some they'd do DJ workshops in an evening after school. And this new guy came in the year above me who would have been year 12 while I was year 11. And he was insane at rapping. This guy called Jason Bradshaw now goes by the name of Jimmy Screech, but he was a member of GreenJade. And we got talking and he was like, you know what, you should come down. Like, we meet on a Friday night and listen to some music. And I was like, okay. So he's like 16, 17 at the time. I'm like 15. So ended up actually he brought Way down. So I met Way and then got invited to their house. And that was kind of how I ended up connecting with GreenJade. And that was where my hip hop journey had kind of took me, where it was like, just being ahead. And at the time, like, I could recite any verse from everything. But then being in and amongst the guys from GreenJade was like, like, I got to get writing. And that was really the spurt. And Jason we'd play games like after school, like sit in a computer lab, and like he'd challenge me to make a rap about everything that was on the walls. So we were just learning to freestyle with one another, and that was the beginnings, really.
And there was quite a lot in GreenJade originally, or at least like the friendship group. Yeah,
well, now, strangely, I always find it funny. Now I would describe GreenJade as a gang. I probably wouldn't have seen it that way at the time, but there were about 25 of us. Certain members were into the selling of street pharmaceuticals, shall we say. Some members carried weapons, and we were based on in an estate in Clapham called the William Bonney Estate. And now having done a lot of gang and knife crime work, I know that those are all of the ingredients of what is considered to be a gang.
Wow.
But I was never really there for that. I was just this 15-year-old hanging around with these 21-year-olds who were all rapping. And like, I'd never been in that environment before. And it was just mad exciting to be able to be around all of that.
Wow. Yeah, that must be quite something. Must have been quite something. And the group got smaller and it officially became the 5 of you.
Yes.
Yeah, and then you guys just took it forward from there. And yeah, I guess there was no stopping you, man. So I think what I always found interesting with you guys as GreenJade, what stood out to me anyway, was your performance and presence on stage. You know, it wasn't just 5 guys. Just not that there's anything wrong with this, but I think what made you, as I say, what made you guys unique was that you seem to have really thought out your performance. And for some tracks, you know, there will almost be some choreography involved, but it wasn't done in a corny way. It was done in a very clever way to highlight what the tracks were about.
Yeah,
I think there was one track I remember you guys performing to which everyone was like still, except for the person that was rapping.
Yeah.
What track was that? Do you remember?
Oh man,
I can't remember what it was.
I
It was
can't
obviously
remember.
a long time ago.
I know the one you're talking about. I can't remember which song it was.
Yeah. But there was lots of things like that, as I say, I thought was really, really clever. How you put that together. I can't really think of any hip hop acts that do that today. You know, because it's kind of the big names. Again, not knocking at all, but it's quite reliant on the stage, like the lighting and the fireworks and all that sort of thing. And I think what was amazing about you guys is that you learnt how to rock a stage without any of that. And in my humble opinion, I think there's too many people who rely on the special effects nowadays to get them through a performance, you know. But I think there's something quite amazing of coming through without, you know, low budget wise, you know, without any of that, and still learning how to rock a crowd.
I think for us, what happened was when we started, it was a bit of a mess, to be honest. But we then very quickly had to work out, what do you do with 5 people on stage that have different personalities? Like what do you do with that? So I mean, literally, like when we first started, we would all stand in a line, and the person who rapped would step forward. It was pretty much.
Right. That's a starting point.
That's a starting point. And then we kind of realised that he kind of looked across the stage, and like I was this Energizer bunny doing this. Judah was generally doing this, right? Way would kind of be running after me, his reason for running after me was he was trying to hide on stage and wanted to be behind, right?
Right.
And then you had Third, who had this kind of groove as well. And then sort of looking at the dynamic, when we went into a rehearsal room and kind of looked at it, it was like, okay, there's levels here. Not everybody needs to be running around, and not everybody needs to be still. But how do we make the most out of me being the Energizer bunny? And Third and Judah grooving? Like, how do we make that work? So we did start to think of things and trying to make it interactive, because as well, we were performing to people who did not care. Like, that was the other thing. It was like we had an audience where this is at a time we're trying to convince, you know, we started off doing a lot of stuff in churches, and we're trying to convince people that, you know, rapping is even allowed. Or we're performing for kids. So the kids want something hype and interactive, and the parents were like, what is this? So it had to be of entertaining value beyond what we were saying. And a couple of instances kind of happened because we were still going to shows, but the most significant that kind of created the GreenJade that people would know was at some, I can't remember when it was, but me and Third went to Birmingham to support Michaela's Concert, who were doing a gig. Because we were like, these guys are always supporting us. You know what? We're just going to jump in a car. Yeah, it's 3 hours. Go to Birmingham to do the show. Because they got the show. So Michaela's Concert were on first. So it was like, yeah, we're here to see our boys. We hadn't really checked who else was on the lineup. We knew Farside were the main headliners. And that night effectively changed our lives and definitely changed our careers, because the next act on was a French hip-hop crew called Saian Supa Crew.
Right.
And Saian so the guy comes out and introduces them, and he's like, right, we're going for certain different guys, and we're gonna have a French rap group, and they only rap in French. But I saw them in soundcheck, and I think you're gonna like them. So everyone's in the crowd is like, nah, French rap. Who knows anything about French rap? The next 45 minutes of my life dictated what happened for the next 15 years, right? It was just trying in some way to be some representation of how good they were. They were insane. It was, and it really opened my mind up, because essentially what it was they were able to communicate in a foreign language through music and engagement. That it didn't matter. We were always like, oh, people need to hear the words. It didn't matter that people didn't know the words. We felt every single word.
Yeah.
And sort of third and then after that, Supernatural was on, who's a freestyle genius. Where I get the whole Battle of the Object from was from him that night. When I remember him pulling a Pikachu out of the audience and making a whole rhyme up about it. And
crazy.
So me and Ferg just sat in a car on the way home, and for the 3-hour drive, just didn't say anything to each other than we need to practice. And we literally, I think we got home and we organized a practice. I think it must have been a Wednesday night. I think we had a practice for the Friday, and we tried to replicate and show people what we'd learned from Saian Supa Crew. And then that became a better way for us to explain our movements and all of those kind of things. And that was really the beginning of the stage show that became really the basis of what GreenJade were trying to do, is being able to communicate through movement as well as vocal. What the beat was trying to say, or what we were trying to say, and really have that energy, whether you knew what we were about, whether you were a faithful or not, whether you were into hip hop or not, we were gonna move you.
Yeah. And you guys did that, man, for sure. You guys did that. Yeah, so when I met you guys, I think it was like a month or so afterwards, you guys had a show at the Cargo.
Yep.
And I was DJing for Warrior.
Yep.
At the time. And then after that, I think there was Manchester we did as well shortly after that.
Yep.
Yeah. And then I can't remember, that must have been like November sort of time. Because I think, if I remember correctly, it was leading up to the Fridge. Yeah. That was quite something, because that was absolutely packed. And I felt like, for me, as your DJ, I felt like that's when I properly arrived for, being part of GreenJade in that way. Yeah. The Manchester gig was good, but it was almost like a pre-season game.
Yeah, that's a great way to describe it.
Yeah, it was kind of like that, and then leading up to the Fridge, and again, like, that was an amazing night. It was packed, absolutely sold out, just full of people, but it was full of people that knew you and wanted to be there, and I think that was quite something, considering you hadn't had much airplay. If I'm correct at that time, but you'd still managed to carve out a scene, or at least carve out a name within a scene. That's something to not be overlooked, because those are the sort of numbers one would get with much airplay.
It was actually, now looking back on it, I think it was probably the largest event headlined by a UK hip hop act at that time.
Wow.
Now sort of, I didn't think about it at the time.
Yeah.
But we had 1,000 people in the Fridge.
So this was your your album, the album launch, wasn't it?
Yeah. And we were, man, the arguments that happened in the run-up to that, because obviously we recorded the album on a run-up, and like, it was a belief that it was possible, because basically what happened, the reason why we chose the Fridge is we'd done a show there, we'd ended up being booked on a show there, and after we did that show, it went really, really well. We were booked by ITV to do something called The Warehouse. So that all came off the back of the Fridge. So when we were coming back and we were thinking about an album, it's like, where could we go and do this? And it was like, well, let's try the Fridge, because we'd done there before and we brought a lot of people through. So that was the reason for choosing that venue. But like going in there when it's empty was terrifying, because it's just this space and you're like, how are we going to fill this? And we did all that we could. And I think we're also aided by the fact that at the time, maybe there wasn't as many things going on. But like, when to come in that night and see it, when we first came on the stage, to see it ram from front to back. Because obviously, it's, for those who don't know, the Brixton Electric used to be called the Fridge. So if you're aware of the Electric, this is the venue that we're talking about. That was insane for us, that these people had come out to see us. So
I had a really scary moment at that show. I have to be honest, which obviously I told you guys later. And so I'm the DJ for the head act, and it's their album launch, and everyone's waiting. You know, as Wiz said, it's 1,000 odd people there, and this was in the day, right, of mini discs. So I was at the back of the stage, and you could see me, and I had my records that I was scratching and the instrumentals that we were dropping, but basically 90% of the set was on this mini disc. So I can't remember if it was at the beginning or halfway, but I believe it was at the beginning, because there seemed to be this like intro, and then everything goes black, and I have to press play for the next bit to come on for you guys to walk on, and it's absolutely pitch black, and on the mini disc screen comes up delete all Y/N. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like suddenly my hands are just sweating, like, and I was panicking, man. I was like, because it was pitch black, all I could see was the screen, but I couldn't see any of the buttons, nothing. Oh man, I was terrified, and I thought, oh man, what a way to introduce myself to the group, man. So I just like, I took a breath. I was like, whew. I don't know how I did it, but I just you know, you just have to like look 100 times before you press a button. I'm like, I just managed to press the no button. And
thank you.
Oh man.
How old were you at the time? Because you were about 18, 19, weren't you?
Yeah, I just turned 18 then. I turned 18 at the beginning of the month.
So no pressure.
No pressure at all, man. I'm like,
biggest gig of your life. This kid just turning into adulthood. And but funnily enough, I remember us doing a show. I think it was at Manchester, and we were hanging out afterwards, and we were chatting to someone, and the conversation came up about who's the oldest and who's the youngest, and who's the oldest is Judah. No, Way by like 3 weeks. Yeah, that's it. So, you know, who's the oldest? Oh, Way's the oldest. And then, who's the youngest? And everyone automatically just said, you, Wiz. And then I just kept quiet. And then suddenly all you guys turned to me and went, wait a minute, how old are you? and I told you guys, and you're like, what, really? And I was like, yeah. So, because traditionally, because that's what I'm saying, I'd been the youngest at that point for about 8 years. Before you kind of came in. So it was always used to it,
a default answer.
Yeah, it was. It was.
Yeah. Particularly when I started to get more involved in GreenJade, there seemed to be a real heart for community. And we ended up working closely with XLP, doing the Gunzdown tour, going into schools to tackle the issues around gun and knife crime. Would you mind just unpacking how that came about? Not just meeting up with Patrick Regan and the XLP team, but also why you felt as a group it was important for GreenJade to be involved.
So essentially the trigger for all of it was we were doing a show on New Year's Eve would have been, I think, 2002 going into 2003 in Birmingham. I remember specifically, I think it was the Bethel Convention Centre. And we did this show and had a really miserable night. Like the crowd weren't on it. They were just really off. And we were really upset about the gig, actually. And I remember us driving home from Birmingham. Lots of important things seem to happen for us driving home from Birmingham. Something about that M40. And we were listening to the radio and the news came on that 2 young women had been shot in a gangland shooting in Birmingham, not very far from where we were. And it just kind of really resonated that, wow, like we are performing to people who are supposed to be children of life and, love, and they're miserable. And there's these 2 girls out for a night out as their first night as adults, and they didn't even make it into the new year. And it really struck a chord with us. And I think at the time, there was this beat that I loved by Neptunes called Love You Better, that was done by LL Cool J.
Yeah, LL Cool J, yeah.
And I just loved that beat. And it was on that beat that I came up with the Brakaka, back up and put your guns down, step away from the mad, just lay flat on the ground. That was where it came from. And then I wrote a verse and I came back to the guys and was like, look, I just really want to do something about this whole issue of gun and knife crime. And then I was reminded of the fact that actually, Way had been slashed when he was younger, having got into a fight. And there was a number of other guys who sort of experienced, violence from weapons when they were younger. And we were all like, yeah, you know what? It's a real issue. So we wrote the song Gunzdown. Way did the original production. You did a fantastic remix of it. Oh, and I was playing it. I think we were signed to OTR at the time, so it was going to be like their first big single that we did with them. And I played it to a kid who I was mentoring at the time, who was involved in some skullduggery, and he listened to the song, and I was all like, yeah, we're going to change the world with this song. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. We're going to do this. And he listened to the song and he looked at me and he went really honestly. He's like, no offense, it's a really good song. But what difference do you actually think that that's going to make to what's going on? And I stopped, and I'm really glad I did. I stopped and I listened to the heart of what he was saying. And it was like, yeah, you're doing all the right things, but who's going to hear that really needs to hear that? And it really made me stop and think, like, what can we do with this song that it's not just something that goes on a radio, but it actually goes to the heart of the people who are most at risk of this issue. So we done, I think, a schools tour or Christmas performances for this charity XLP. So I went back to them and went, look, you guys are in schools, we make music. Could we do something together somehow, something that could marry the two of those, and you get a message about gun and knife crime and stuff, and we'll do performances and, make the entertainment side of it, but also have a message underneath it. And that was really the beginnings of the Gunzdown Schools Tour. And what was happening on the other side of that is that I remember we were in New Wine waiting to do a interview. And next to us, while we were waiting outside with these Psalm 119 Christian comic books, we're flicking through this comic book and it's like, man, the illustrations are incredible in this. And Third, I think, made a joke like, oh, wouldn't it be great to have a music video like that? That'll never happen. And it just sat in me and was like, I shall make this happen somehow. So I managed to get hold of the guys from Psalm 119 and said, look, we've got this thing that we want to take into schools and we want to affect young people. Do you think that you could make something for it? And they were like, yeah. And then they just gave us all of the artwork. And then it was like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do with this now.
Oh, man.
But my best friend growing up is a visual effects artist. So I kind of said to him, look, I have no expectation. This is the song. I'm going to give you these. If you could do anything with it, it would be great. So apparently he was at work and he's sort of doing some stuff in his lunch break. And this guy, who's an editor, walked in. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, a mate of mine's doing this. And thinking about trying to make a video. I'm trying to think how I might go about it. And a guy went, oh, well, you don't want to do that. You want to do this. And what you could do is this. And I tell you what, let me do it. So,
wow.
So big up Richard Poet. He took on the idea, and I had no creative control over it at all. It was just like, we put it in his hands, and it was like, cool, like, I don't know what I'm doing anyway. So I remember Sule, my friend, sort of rang me and was like, oh yeah, it's finished, you should come and watch it. It's like, okay. So we ended up in a video store in Tottenham Court Road, and he puts this thing on the TV, and basically the video that you now know to be is what I see. Now, this has come from just do whatever you can.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, and like that video came on, and I pretty much burst into tears in the shop.
Oh man.
Like, I could not believe what he's done. And then after that, the second response was, how much is he gonna charge us? Because I cannot afford that. Like, I was just thinking, oh my God, I now owe
there's two
someone.
Emotions. There's two emotions. You're watching it going, oh, this is amazing, and then amazing. Like, oh crap,
I've got to pay for it. And I was like, this guy is gonna charge me 20 grand.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And so I'd like tentatively like called him. I was like, oh man, this is amazing. Thank you so much. And then he I'm tentatively getting to the point where I'm like, so how much do I owe you? And like, he asked me like, so what do you want to do with this? Why do you want to do this? So I was like, okay, by this point in time, we're further on down the line with XLP. And they were like, right, okay, well, what we want to do is go into schools, and we needed this as a visual so it could interact with young people and they could feel like it was something for them. It was really targeted at them. So we needed this to be able to do that. We don't have a lot of money, but this is what we really want to do because we feel this is an issue. And he turned around and he went, cool. If you do that, that's my payment.
Oh my days. Yeah.
He was like, I don't want a penny for it.
Wow.
What I want you to do is take this video and go and change the lives of kids. That's my only payment.
I remember you showing it to us in the studio, and we were speechless, man. We were absolutely speechless. Not just, I mean, the quality of it, and then to find out that not paying anything for it was just like, oh my days, like this is just something else. And it was a big part in the tour itself, obviously, and the track Gunzdown was the theme tune of the tour. And it was just, it was really, I think it was really cool, not just because we had something that looked really good, but it was something for the students to engage with as well, throughout, when we performed that track. And it wasn't just something that looked cool, but it had a really important message that got them thinking. And I think, as I say, it was a real success, that particular tour. And then, of course, for you personally, that led on to doing some more sort of youth work type, and you ended up working for XLP, and now you're doing now you're the management director of Tileyard Impact. Can you tell us more about what you do there and what the work of Tileyard?
I mean, just bridging the gap a little bit as well. The reason it became so important to me was it ended up being the most successful thing that I'd ever done. Or for GreenJade, probably the biggest thing that we'd ever done. It was the first thing that really made us any income. It was, we ended up partnering with Choice FM and being the Peace on the Streets official sort of schools tour. I think we saw 10,000 young people over 5 years, which corresponded with a drop in gun and knife crime in London. We worked with the then mayor, who is now the Prime Minister of the country. Like it put, we got a Choice FM Record of the Week, and it just put us into places. And I mean, we got nominated for a MOBO from it, and it just was amazing what it did. But that was from the career side. But the other side of it was one of the shows that we did. This teacher, after the show, this teacher brings this kid to me and goes, "You need to speak to him." I'm like, okay. And I said to the kid, like, how did you find the show? And he was like, I think it was really good, but I think it's a bit late for me. And we're like, well, why would you say that? And he said, well, my cousin was shot and killed like a month ago. My brother was stabbed but survived. And I know that there's a hit out on my life. And, so I think I'm a bit too late in the game for this. And I was like, well, how old are you? He's like, I'm 15, but it's real. And he pulled up his shirt and he showed me he was wearing a bulletproof vest. I was like, wow. Okay. So we introduced him to the guys from XLP and a few other people and got some support around him because he was at a school that was in between Peckham and Brixton. And there was lots of joint gang problems there. And, he ended up actually, he got arrested, and then one of us, I think, went to the police station. I think that was Judah, went to the police station. We met up with his family and spoke to his mum and stuff. And then 6 weeks after the Gunzdown schools tour, he actually got stabbed in his school. But thank God he survived. And because we'd already put a lot of support work around him with the charity and everything else, he had people to talk to. People went to his bedside and supported him. And, it was eventually felt that it was better for him to move to Jamaica rather than stay here. So he moved back to get away from it. That point, it became real. Like, it wasn't, I'm just doing this nice little song to get people. It was real. And then we had one other experience where we were doing an anti-gun crime youth event in Clapham. And just before we're with Zion Noise, and just before we were about to perform Gunzdown,
I was there.
2 kids run into the room with a gun and tell everybody to get on the floor. At this point, we're elevated on the stage, and I look down behind me, and there's 35 kids screaming in this 2 meter space behind the stage. And the guy with the gun that just scans the stage with his gun and puts the gun in my chest. And it was this is not just something that's happening out there and about. This is something that's real. This is actually going on. And as a result, those 2 things that really showed me that what we were doing was important and how much youth needed support and how you could use music as a means by which to both help mental health, both to help with jobs, and to help with self-esteem and self-confidence, that people didn't feel the need to get involved in that level of criminality. So after GreenJade came to an end in 2010, the charity asked if I would come and run their arts, because obviously I had a lot of experience in the music industry. So I went to XLP and I started putting on showcases, and then we would try and ask the kids what were the things you were interested in so we could get them more experience. And I did that for 8 years, and while I was there, I also was involved in a couple of projects for the big lottery, like the Big Music Project. And also I opened a school called Elam with Will from Chasing Status.
Okay.
So what happened so I was bringing all of those experiences together, but then became quite frustrated by the fact that there still wasn't anywhere for people to go. So you could be involved in a great youth center that's got production equipment and you're learning to sing and you're learning to perform, or you could have done our showcase, but there was then no route to the industry. And what I realized was that I needed to be in the industry opening a door. And Tileyard, for those who don't know, is the largest creative community in Europe. So we're 150 businesses and 100 private recording studios. We're home to people like Segala, Apple Beats One Radio, Pioneer DJs head offices are here. We've got film companies here. We've got publishing companies. Charlie Sloth is based here. It's like this melting pot.
Wow, that's really cool, man. And you've made that happen, man. You've made that happen, and it's great to hear what's going on. And I think that's really interesting the way you put that, because it's not only taking people out of something, it's also now pushing them forward into a great, into possibilities. So that sounds absolutely fantastic, mate. And Yeah, and I congratulate you on that. And there's many more things to come. Wiz, I tuned into a Instagram live thing you did a few weeks ago, where you were being interviewed, and you said something, but I want you to say it because you'll say it a lot better because it was your words. But we used to joke around about the sort of Superman Clark Kent syndrome that we had, because we would do such amazing events, and as you say, the Gunzdown tour was like very consistent, wasn't it, throughout that period of time, and there was regular income for GreenJade, but there were some massive highlights as well. One in particular was the Olympics in Greece. I think it was 2004, right?
Yep.
And I remember us sort of joking around about how we're doing this amazing event in the middle of Athens, performing to basically everyone in Athens, because the sound just went, went to everyone. And but we knew that we were going to go home and people treat us like Clark Kent.
Yeah.
But you said something in this interview, this Instagram live, that I thought was really encouraging for artists who do struggle with this idea of not being able to do what they love every day, and wanting to be like a Beyonce or a Jay-Z or Kanye, in terms of success. I don't want to give the punchline away, so I'd leave it to you, because I thought it was really good, and I think it would encourage a lot of people who are watching or listening to this, the artists. Yeah, so I'll leave that to you if you don't mind. Yeah,
so I think for me, that whole experience was mad with Athens. Like, it happened in 23 hours. I always remember that really specifically. 23 hours. Our flight in, I think, got in at 10 o'clock.
Because we'd done festival in Amsterdam. Just before that. Yeah.
And I think we got there, and so we've just had this amazing experience. Just like you say, like thousands and thousands of people would perform to. I still remember the video footage that you had from that little video camera that you had. And then I came back on the Sunday picked up by my mum at the airport, and go home. And then Monday morning, I'm back at my temp job as an admin assistant. And I remember like going in, and like at lunchtime, everyone was sitting down and having a conversation. And it was like, oh, so what did you do on the weekend? And someone was like, oh, went to the cinema. What did you do? I went to the pub. And it got to me. It was like, so what did you do on the weekend? And I was like, I opened the Olympics in Athens. And the whole room burst out laughing, like, yeah, right. And I was like, I did. I really did. and it, at the time, it crushed me, because it was like, I was there. I wasn't imagining it. I really did do that show. But here's my reality of I'm filing. You know what I mean? I'm putting things in files and putting them in cabinets, and that's my day job. I've just rocked 10,000 people at one of the biggest events in the world, and I'm back here doing this. And at the time, I took it really badly, if I'm totally honest. But then now that I'm older, I see it slightly differently, in that, my God, how lucky was I at, 25 years old, I think then, like, and I have the ability to be flown out to an amazing place, have a previous gold medal winner as my artist liaison, to rock this show in front of people. I remember we had people coming up to us from all over. I met this b-boy from Afghanistan. Like, how we get b-boys in Afghanistan? Like, but actually, that filing job was paying my life so that I could have this other life. Do you know what I mean? Clark Kent was effectively paying his rent by working the Daily, what was it? Not Daily Planet. Daily Planet.
Yeah, Daily Planet.
That was his day job. Do you know what I mean? He was still Superman. But Superman didn't pay his bills. Do you know what I mean? But the Daily Planet did, and I came to a better understanding of, you know what, to coin a phrase from an amazing rap group, do what you do.
Thank you.
And, you know, essentially, there are some, you know, how important is it to you? But there are two, you know, sometimes what we want is our purpose and our money to come from the same places, but it doesn't always. You can bring those together over time, but don't hate the one either, because they're both making each other happen, and make the most out of those experiences as you can.
Yeah, and this is the thing, isn't it, as well, because just because you're not, say, rocking the stages every weekend as an MC or a DJ or a musician or whatever form of art you do, doesn't make you less of an MC or a DJ or whatever, you know, because we all go through seasons and circumstances, you know, and I think that's something really important to take into account, because as you so amazingly put, as artists we can be, we go through such highs and lows, you know, and we can almost define ourselves by the productivity or the practicality of doing the art, but we have to remember that, you know, not everyone can do Athens, you know, or do an event like that, so to say, hey, every so often I get to do this, you know, is actually, you know, quite something, because I think sometimes we look at these successful artists
superstars
and think unless I'm doing that, then what I'm doing is not meaningful, or it doesn't matter, but actually it does, and it's about perspective, isn't it?
Yeah, you know, it is that thing about, you know, it's taken me a long time to bring my passion and my paycheck together, and I'm very, very glad for it, but either way they both had to happen. You know, I needed to have my passion outlet, and I also needed to have a paycheck. And when I got over the fact that they may not necessarily have started together, they did develop that way. And it was a journey for me to get there. I mean, I also remember something that Ferd said, because there was a time when I was being particular, I was just annoyed. There's a particular other artist that and it always felt like they had all of the breaks. And I was just sitting there going, oh, why does he always get that? And everyone's always talking about him, and like he gets all the good opportunities and blah, blah, blah. And Ferd like turned to me and went, you do realise that people feel the same way about us like that? I was like, now that you say that, you're probably right. Let me appreciate what it is that we do. And concentrate on that rather than looking around on others. And that was a really helpful change of my mindset. That conversation, it really helped me put a few things into perspective. And
that's something I guess you try and push, get across to the young people that you're mentoring and managing as well, because it can affect our mental health, can't it?
Absolutely. It really did. It had a significant effect on my mental health, definitely. And I think giving them the perspective that you don't have to be Beyonce. It's cool. Do you know what I mean? Because there's almost this binary thing where it's like, I'm either Michael Jackson or I'm nothing. And that's so far from the truth. And I think that we have to tell, you know, I think so many parents are afraid that their children are going to become, you know, this homeless musician archetype. That they dissuade people from the creative industries and like, oh, you're never going to make any money out of that. And it's like, sometimes it's not always about making money. Our creative output on this creativity that we had, the reason for it isn't necessarily to make money. The reason for it is for us to be able to heal ourselves and be able to deal with and manage emotional pain, because it's a great outlet. And when you see music as that, and rather than I got to be famous, and when you see it as your means by which to connect people on an emotional and spiritual level, then it isn't about fame and money and cars and various other things. It's about your ability. You have this talent that few other people are blessed with, that you have the opportunity to use for yourself and for the benefit of others. And when you start looking at it that way, for me, it really took the pressure off. And I understood that it was more important to be able to deliver what I would deliver, but then find the audience that it was for. And once I found the audience it was for, it became like that great example of Gunzdown. We found that audience, and they really appreciated it, and they benefited from it, and that was the most important thing.
Thank you so much, Wiz, for sharing what you've shared. It's been a real pleasure being on that journey with you, being on the GreenJade journey with you, and seeing you grow. And you've also helped develop me as an artist. All of you guys have played a massive part in my life. So yeah, I want to say a big thank you personally to you as well. And yeah, just keep doing what you're doing. Please do check out what Wiz is up to. The links and social media stuff will be in the description, so do go and check that out. He has a regular thing on Wednesdays, is it? Words of Wisdom Wednesdays, which are basically words of wisdom coming from Wisdom himself. So you've been listening to the Sekrit Podcast, Conversation with Wisdom. Peace out.
Sekrit.